My name is Vermin Supreme. I'm a friendly fascist. I'm a tyrant that you can trust, and you should let me run your life because I know what is best for you. Now, of course, I say that, and I say that fairly often. And when I say it, I usually pretend like it's real. But of course, we all know that I am a highly respected political satirist that has been utilizing some simple, elegant, and effective techniques in order to activate the magic boot. I do wear a rubber boot on my head. I suppose if you were to say, "Oh, that guy with the boot on his head running for president," more people would probably recognize me. And of course, it is a magical boot. It has allowed me to amplify my free speech, First Amendment rights exponentially. It has allowed me to communicate with millions of people around the globe and interact with media across the flat Earth. And so, yeah, I'm just some guy, and I had something that I wanted to say, and I found a way to say it that had a great deal of resonance, apparently, and people enjoyed it to a level. And I've been, yes, as you referenced, I've been running for president of America, or at least claiming to be doing that in a sort of a satirical parody. But I've been doing it for over 30 years, and it has given me a level of notoriety and reach and audience that I was actually able to make a legitimate offer to the Libertarian Party of my services as a candidate. And I
Yeah,
was
I wanted to ask
offering the
you.
whole. Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you more about that. You're pretty much America's preeminent performance artist, certainly my favorite. What was the Libertarian
Thank you.
Gang's reaction to your attempt to become their nominee? I'm just really interested to hear about it. It almost sounds like it's almost like a film plot or some crazy satire in real life.
A little bit. I mean, it would have been probably a lot funnier if there was a reveal at the end and me saying, "Oh, I hosed y'all." But the fact was that I wasn't, and I was my journey, my trip to being comfortable enough and overlapping and understanding my context in the context of the Libertarian Party was indeed an ongoing and long one. I
Yeah.
mean, if you know, I'm a left. I come from a left anarchist perspective,
Yeah,
and
I wanted to ask you about that. You said that Peter Kropotkin was a great anarchist thinker and writer, not somebody that people would typically associate with the Libertarian Party.
that part is true. I think. But there is indeed the Libertarian Party is not a right-leaning monolith. Number one. Now that's there's a lot of misconceptions, and I had to overcome these misconceptions and clarify these misconceptions before I felt comfortable working with this particular party. And one of those misconceptions was that the Libertarian Party is a right-leaning monolith, and that is simply not true. It has its own internal left-right spectrum, and there is a fairly strong and influential libertarian socialist caucus of all things, which when it it's only been in existence 4 or 5 years, but it's made great great leaps in terms of its acceptance. When it first became a thing, it was roundly denounced as a libertarian socialist. That's like a banana octopus, and they just couldn't grok it. But it exists to make a space within the party for anti-authoritarian, anti-state socialists.
Yeah.
And
Straight
of
on.
course, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconception and butthurt within the Libertarian Party itself, of course, because it's up for a long time. It was almost a right-leaning monolith. But there's been a lot of work going on, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Nolan quiz, the world's smallest political quiz. It sort of asks you a series of questions, and then it places you on the four quadrants.
Yeah.
And the upper half is like the authoritarian left and the authoritarian right, and the lower half is the anti-authoritarian left and the anti-authoritarian right. And it is the work within the party to mainly initiated by the libertarian socialists and the left leaners of this concept of bottom unity. and that the lower left quadrants, it's referring to the lower left and the lower right quadrants, need to need to recognize what they do have in common, and that their common enemy is the state, and that they need to work on that. Now, another thing about the Libertarian Party that many people might not understand is that it is a party that consists of anarchists and minarchists working together to dismantle the state. And of course, not everybody does realize that. I mean, they'll dismiss it as Republican light, or what have you.
Well,
Yeah,
but
that's
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gavin.
I couldn't agree more with you that there needs to be a bit of an alliance there between the socialists and the more anti-authoritarian libertarians. I think it's a totally valid pursuit to run to try to kind of co-opt the party, just as people like Bernie Sanders tried to make the Democratic Party more socialist. I think it's a totally valid pursuit to try to make the
I mean, I don't know if co-opting is the right word. Perhaps expanding the possibilities of the base. And of course, my campaign did in fact draw a lot of attention and a lot of eyeballs, and a lot of people who would not have given the Libertarian Party a second look, but just the fact that Vermin Supreme is running for their nomination, I better check this shit out. And of course, during my run, I was, I believe that as a candidate of a party, you need to represent that party, and I believe that that is best represented by the platform of that party. And so I essentially adopted the Libertarian Party platform as my own to present as what I was representing. And if you can check that out at lp.org/platform. And you will, and the platform itself, and I guess the Libertarian Party itself is, it acknowledges a state. It's statist in that sense, that it is willing to play within the framework of the state. And so if you read the platform, it has very sort of state-based things, minimizing the military to be adequate only for defense of our borders, essentially, and things of that nature.
I think that's definitely one of the big areas of agreement we have is 100% foreign policy, and same with drugs. Libertarians are famously very pro-freedom in that respect, and that's been part of your platform. You've included the 420, obviously numerology heavily in your platform, campaign literature. Wanted to talk a little bit more about that, what 420 means to you, and would it be declared, a national holiday under a Vermin Supreme presidency? Is it?
Sure. Why the hell not? It's always 420 somewhere, and I've, as a hippie and a rainbow gatherer, and been quite familiar with the 420 lingo for many years, and it's as good as secret code word as any. I mean, back in the day, it was like, the 13 was the secret marijuana,
really?
Because there's the 13th letter in the alphabet, and so people would have a little 13 on their patch or something to signify that.
One question I had.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Vermin.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, one of the questions that I wanted to speak with you about is there was sort of a running, a joke amongst intellectuals that libertarianism was no longer a viable form of, structuring society, and that the COVID-19, kind of laid that bare. And I think there was a piece in the Atlantic that ran somewhat like that. As a compassionate person and somebody who, values that social aspect of anarchism, how would you, like to see a government respond to a pandemic crisis?
Well, once again, let me start with my satirical, facetious take, if I may.
By all means.
Yes, I am the only candidate who is going to make COVID-19 against the law. That's right. If you are in possession of COVID-19, you will be in violation of that law. I will also be creating COVID-free zones, because that's it works so well with guns and drugs and keeping things out like that. So if we create a lot of COVID-free zones, of course, naturally, consistently with my platform, I will go back in time and I will kill baby COVID-19, and I will also be building a microscopic anti-microbe, antiviral wall around America, which will be followed up with a moat. We'll dig a moat around the country and fill it full of hand sanitizer. So that's that's my platform that I'd love to put out there, of course.
Do you suspect that
now,
COVID-19 may be the zombie apocalypse?
No, it's a dry run for it. Obviously, it's a test. As far as I know, nobody's been reanimated from that yet. Now, from a libertarian perspective, I would like to think that a libertarian president would, number one, have paid a lot more attention to the warnings of the experts, warning of the potential of an imminent pandemic, which the experts have been saying for years and years. Number two, I believe that they would not be in denial of such science that was coming their way. They would not have been in denial of the briefings that, and probably even listened to the briefings or read the briefing papers, warning of such a pandemic coming in our direction. And I would like to believe that, depending on the libertarian president, whether they had abolished FEMA and the FDA and CDC and all that, but let's assume that they hadn't done that. That FEMA would have been better prepared. That the preparation aspect of things, in terms of having enough personal protection gear lined up and plans in place, and of course, I think the thing that a lot of the libertarians hammer is that, of course, the regulations that prevented the FDA regulations that prevented the manufacture of testing kits would probably have been struck down. There likely would have been the regulations would have been slashed to the point where the marketplace and the would have been putting out these testing kits that were not readily available. And one of the main reasons was that, oh, okay, I didn't mute that time. One of the main reasons was that the CDs, that the FDA was preventing test kits from getting to the market without several years of testing. And of course, the same goes true of the vaccine. Now, there was a doctor who actually, when COVID first started appearing in the US, that ended up having to violate the law in order to test people, in order to confirm that it was, in fact, a thing that was happening in America. And when she reported her findings and the results of her testing, they told her to ditch him, to bury him, and she did not. She put it out there. So those, I guess those are just a few examples. Now, naturally, as a left-leaning anarchist, I've always been about building up systems, building up parallel helpful systems that will not, which will lower our dependence on the government. I believe firmly in mutual aid. And in fact, as an anarchist, I was always a little bit leery of presenting the whole idea of mutual aid to the libertarian movement, because I was afraid that just a phrase was going to be co-opted. But during my run, I found myself believing that it was a very important aspect to be hammering home and introducing, and the love and the compassion and the mutual aid and the charity and the volunteerism. And I was very fond of pointing out during all the various debates was that these are the things that have been getting us through the pandemic. It's neighbors checking in on neighbors, family checking in on family, friends checking in on friends. It's not the federal government that has been knocking on anybody's door, making sure they're okay, or getting groceries for their elderly neighbors. No, that is the people. So I believe very strongly that if we are to be able to dismantle the government, which is very consistent with my left anarchist understandings, that we need to build up the infrastructure ourselves in creating these parallel structures that, once again, lessen the need for the alleged government infrastructure. It is arguable that anything the government undertakes, as a rule, is probably oftentimes mismanaged, inefficient cost-wise, and has unintended consequences.
Do you worry
And
that
so
do you worry in the place of government that we might see an increased corporate state? It seems like in place of government. We see corporations and privatized industries taking over, and in those instances, they're not really even accountable to the people. At least government's accountable to the voters and the people to some extent, right? I just wondered how you would.
Oh yeah, no, nope, and that's a very, very real concern, and I believe it's some of the phraseology that is used by the left and the right that we end up talking past one another.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of for many years I was consider myself an anti-capitalist. I identified it as such, and then it was like, well, okay, maybe I'm not against capitalism. Maybe I'm okay with mom and pop operations and all that, but it is the corporatocracy. It's the government corporate fusion. In the government providing all these breaks and incentives that completely screw the playing field and allow the bigger players to consolidate.
So, in your
And
view, the government is currently aiding and abetting and is complicit in the corporate takeover of the country, and that's kind of part of your thesis as to why you're so anti-government.
Absolutely. I think that's one clear example. The Libertarian Party platform specifically says that the government should not be subsidizing or playing favorites with any energy source.
Yeah.
And it's quite clear that the government's choice to subsidize the fossil fuel industry has essentially screwed the pooch to the point where the planet may be uninhabitable shortly enough.
And the reason why they're in favor of it is just because they're having their pockets filled by those people. It's not like they're taking money from like the ethanol industry or anything. Like, there's a very clear reason why we've chosen fossil fuel.
The corn industry it does lobby. Well, it's
true.
the importance
That's
of
fair.
Iowa that
That's fair.
it's Iowa is one of the first states in the primary caucus season that makes it so important, that makes the politicians promise that whole ethanol. I mean, it
never really came to fruition. I just mean that, like, would you agree that campaign finance is a big reason why we're so screwed? The reason why politicians might be making decisions like that is because of the corruption element.
I would concur with that. I would concur that the lobbyists are a huge problem, and the revolving door between industry and the government and industry, and the watchdogs being former industry or run by the industry. That's all concerning. So I would say that it is the libertarians are not for a corporate takeover in any way, shape, or form. They're about a free market, a level playing field. Myself, I believe in the decentralization. Once again, it's like you talk about mutual aid and charitable acts, and can that be scaled up to take care of our current needs? Probably not. But if we can decentralize and descale the centralization, perhaps these two things can meet somewhere in the middle, where it is feasible that these initiatives, these people-based initiatives, could ultimately fulfill our needs. Now, once again, of course, I'm not a pundit and I'm not a candidate now, so I'm not really talking out my ass in an authoritative manner. I mean, I want to make that clear. Once again, I am just an individual. I mean, we glean shit from the Facebook. We do some reading. We try and make informed decisions. I happen to have a lot more canned bullshit on stock because I've been doing the Libertarian presidential debates for over a year. And like that. And of course, I think we all know how we all know how we feel. We all have opinions, and I think that's a real issue in America today, that people are so, maybe they feel so strongly about their opinions, but they absolutely are offended by other people's opinions, and there's this huge acrimony and people fighting over the stupidest damn things.
Yeah, well, that was what I found refreshing about our conversation with your former running mate, Spike Owen. Obviously, there were a number of issues where we did not see eye to eye, but we were able to find a massive area of agreement with what I would consider to be maybe the more right-leaning libertarians, which is their push to and solidarity with the left on the police. Could you talk about?
I believe that the Libertarian Party has been very it's an anti-authoritarian party, and it's I think that's always been its focus. It's never been one to support the police or an authoritarian government or a police state or a surveillance state or a prison state. It's always been against mass incarceration. It's always been against police infringing upon our rights. So there's really there's nothing inconsistent with that. And once again, it's one of those things that I, as a left-leaning anarchist, discovered. It's like, okay, and you see a lot of claims that they're that they're bootlickers, and it's just couldn't be further from the truth. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you.
Now, of course,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would just point out that, of course, the Libertarian Party, big L libertarians, I mean, that's sort of a smaller part of the spectrum, and that there's a whole bunch of people that, will call themselves libertarians with a
Like the
small
Koch brothers
L,
or
or
whatever.
consider themselves libertarian. And, a lot of them are horrible people, or use the claim that they're libertarians to act out in terrible, obnoxious ways. And a lot of the big L libertarians, we will roll our eyes and just say, what the hell? What up with that?
Yeah.
And because of the looseness of the phrase and the term, and that anybody can identify themselves as such, that in and of itself causes a lot of these misconceptions and a lot of these stereotypes.
I myself. Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I myself certainly, I'd anticipated when I first learned of you and your, bid for the Libertarian, nomination, would have assumed that you would have offered a more Ayn Randian perspective on the world. But through our conversation, I've almost found that you sound more like Noam Chomsky through the way that you would constitute society. And I think that part of the, I would say the smartest aspects of your campaign has been your willingness to adopt this parity that you've committed your life to. Do you think that that's been a good way to break the ice between people who are so who have so many misconceptions or preconceptions, and to be able to get through it to the actual policy discussion?
Well, I think so. I think that's really been one of the blessings, one of the inadvertent results of my satirical campaigning. Obviously, in 2012, I went viral with that glitter bombing of Randall Terry, and became this meme, a meme figure. And because my initial presentation was perceived not to be partisan, I was not attacking a particular party or a politician. And because it was accepted to be this sort of overarching critique of the system, that it was appreciated and embraced by people across the political spectrum, from the hard left to the far right, and everybody in between. And that in of itself has been great. And of course, people who end up following me a little closely over the years, who have vehement disagreements, realize their terrible mistake. But it is a weird thing that even if I'm protesting a serious fasci leaning event like the straight pride rally that time, and I have fans. I have fans on the other side of the aisle, and it's like, oh goodness, it's awkward. I'll say it's awkward, that's for sure. But once again, it gives the opportunity for discussion and perhaps softening them. And in the bottom unity initiative, if you will, within the Libertarian Party has been pretty successful. Because it's a little strange party, because people come in and they often zing and they zang, and they end up like really far from where they came in. And a lot of people who come in from the far right leaning Mises Rothbardians, Law and Order, they have come my way. My campaign staff was consisted of left and right libertarians who really felt that my image and using me as front person and to figurehead was a very clever way to try and draw people in.
Did you encounter a lot of sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, did you encounter like a lot of smugness, kind of unsufferable people that just felt like they were above it, or felt like you were cheapening the libertarian platform and all of its glory by participating?
Yes, because I think there's a higher percentage of literalists. Literalists always have a problem with me. People who
Mm-hmm.
take me literally have a real issue with it. And yes, a lot of people, a fair amount of people were who they knew me from the meme. They only knew that I wore a boot on my head, and they were taking me as a literal thing, and not seeing the larger picture of what I had to offer them. And we had to come up with this whole initiative, in on the joke, hashtag in on the joke, and we had to come up with specific educational materials. If you go to the Vermin Supreme YouTube channel, and you can find the in on the joke 10-minute mini documentary where we just sort of laid it out in very simple terms as we could, to make it very clear that, yes, I'm an anarchist, yes, I'm an activist, yes, a performance, but it's not making a joke of the party. I was offering them I wasn't trolling them. I was offering them the opportunity to allow me to help them troll the duopoly.
Yeah, and since the media
But
never
yeah,
covers, I was just going to say, since the media never covers third parties anyway, it's a kind of an ingenious thing. I mean, it seems like the libertarians, the Greens, whatever, they're so cursed with this perpetual cycle of not being covered, and then not even getting to 5%. Hell, maybe with someone like you, they really would be able to actually get that press, or maybe get on the debate stage.
yeah,
And that would be legendary.
that was our argument.
Yeah.
I mean, it was generally believed by my supporters that out of the candidates that were presented, I was the most likely to get 5%. I was the most likely to garner a lot of crazy media coverage, and brought a bunch of people into the party, and a bunch of young people into the party. And it's and I think all those points were and that's, I spent the whole year just sort of trying to convince people to agree with the statement that it was not inconceivable.
Yeah.
And once they agreed that that was not inconceivable, then they were very likely to flip over and say, yeah, let's go for it.
Well, do you plan on making another run for it in the libertarian side?
It's very tempting. It's very tempting. I did have to tack a little right, obviously during that election year. I was recruited. It just didn't pop into my head that I was going to their nomination. People reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to run a serious campaign, and after much consideration, I said, it seemed like such a natural extension of what I had been doing for so long that I agreed to it. And it was a very interesting experience for me. It was like coming, almost a new character, a new aspect. The serious Vermin, or eventually it was Vermin without the boot, because during the debates they were putting in novelty headwear restrictions specifically aimed at myself and Dan Taxationist Theft Berman, who had a big yellow Taxationist Theft hat. And at first, the first time, it was like, well, yeah, you can debate, but we're not going to let you wear the boot. And I'm like, well, fuck that. But then I'm like, after I gave it some thought, I was like, okay, I don't need this boot. Okay, well, because ultimately it was about, getting that nomination would have allowed me to wear the boot on the national stage and be as wild as I wanted while presenting libertarian ideas. Yeah, truly. I think, but we can take consolation in the fact that in a parallel dimension universe, it's happening, and it's happening pretty.
Kind of reminds me of when Hunter Thompson ran for sheriff of Aspen, Colorado, when he shaved his head so he could refer to the incumbent sheriff as his long-haired opponent in the 70s. One thing that we wanted to, I wanted to ask you about is what you think of our current options as far as the presidency is concerned. We have, of course, Joe Biden and Donald Trump running, but, seems like Kanye West has entered the ring along with Joe Jorgensen and Howie Hawkins of the respective Libertarian and Green Party. I just wondered how you look the options as a voter, as an American citizen.
Rank those options for us, actually? Could you rank the presidential options in your order of preference, if that's something you'd be comfortable doing?
I will go Joe Jorgensen number one. because I do have party loyalty, and I'm trying to angle for a 24 bid. So, politically, yes, of course. Kanye,
Kanye.
Biden, Trump.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd
where's
put
Howie
Kanye number
Hawkins?
two.
What about Howie?
Oh, Howie. I'll put Howie Hawkins after Kanye.
Okay.
After Kanye, all right. Before the
Kanye,
corporate
Howie,
order.
Hey, Kanye
Biden,
does
Trump,
like
I
ponies.
guess.
The Kardashians are really big on ponies, apparently. So you do have some crossover there.
Yes. And he's batshit crazy, but whatever.
Yeah, that first album was
Uh,
good. Vermin, what are your plans for the future? Do you intend to continue to, your perpetual candidacy for the presidency? Do you have any new ideas that you might want to share with us? What does the future look like for Vermin Supreme?
The running for president thing is so fun, I have such a following. So many people just really believe in it. Not everybody can do what I do, or wants to do what I do, or has the chops, or the willingness to not give the fuck to the point of doing it. I have constituents. I really feel as if though I'm doing it for my constituents, for my fans, the people who believe in me. Granted, people ascribe different levels of import to what I do. Many people are like, "Oh, Vermin, what you do is so important to democracy," and other people are like, "That is so stupid what you do." And everybody's right. It's everybody's subjective interpretation of what it is that I'm doing. And of course, I've always felt that the people who really thought that it was real, I think that's pretty funny. But of course, I've been in a position where I've had to really deconstruct it and let people in on the joke, and more so all the time. I see running as because it is a valuable thing. Because one of the beautiful things about running for president is it's a self-declarative statement. Anybody can do it. Anybody can say it. And once you say it, it becomes an indisputable fact. I'm running for president. Nobody can disprove that. It's real. You don't have to register with the FEC. You don't have to have anybody vote for you. You don't have to beg money, but it becomes a reality. And so there's that part of it. In the Libertarian Party, anybody can run for president and say they're a libertarian. Any libertarian, anybody can essentially run under the libertarian banner. So a lot of times you get some people who are like, well, I don't know if they're really a libertarian. I don't know if they're presenting really libertarian ideas, but nonetheless, they're open enough to be welcomed into the debates and things of that nature. I believe that I will keep on running. Of course, that my run this year, it was the first time, it was my first serious run, the first time I had strategic considerations. I stayed off the New Hampshire primary ballot as a Republican, as I would have liked to have done, because the Libertarians didn't want a fusion candidate. Because I was trying to offer 5%, I didn't want to run afoul of any sore loser laws. Because in some states, if you run in a primary under one party, they won't let you run in the general under another. So there's a lot, so many more considerations involved in this campaign. And I was very deferential to my campaign staff. They knew the lay of the land. That they knew a lot more about running in a real campaign than I did. And so I had to really trust them to guide me through the rigmarole of seeking the Libertarian Party nomination. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I will have forgotten what a horrible pain in the ass it was, and how much work it was, and how much character assassination and bullshit I took by then. But I have a head start. I have a good leg up.
Yeah,
and that's the way of my whole. Every year it has been getting a little bigger. It has been getting a little better.
Sure I remember
12, I thought I hit the pinnacle. I was like super viral famous, and then I was like, well, what will 2016 look like? And then it rolled around, and I started out right there where I left off. And
I remember when I first heard about you, it was just like on a segment of some YouTube show maybe, and you were very niche, I would say. And now, I bring you up, more people are likely to know who you are. I just wanted to give you one last question, and kind of give you a chance for a closing statement of the sort. We're living in a pretty crazy world right now. We have COVID-19 ravaging the country. We have jackbooted thugs out on the street abducting protesters. You've talked a lot about zombie preparedness and everything. Are you worried that this is all leading up to the the zombie apocalypse, which is going to take out this country? Should we be worried about COVID-20, COVID-21, COVID-22?
Oh yes, yep. With a little bit of luck, that's what'll happen.
Yeah.
The zombie apocalypse will be upon us, and it will make all these other things look like nothing to worry about. We'll look back on the jackbooted thugs and the COVIDs, and we'll just laugh. Ha ha ha! Remember when life was so simple?
If only we could have Vermin Supreme as our president for that time, but maybe in an alternate dimension, right? Like you said.
Oh yeah. It's all go, and once we get the time travel machines up and running, everything's happening. Now, I think I'd be remiss if I did not at least point out again that I am the only candidate who has released their dental records. Right there, there's the name of my dentist, and she can vouch for me, so that's important. I'd like to flash my book. It's called iPony: Blueprint for New America.
Nice.
It's a very exciting book. It's a book about the future, long after a Vermin Supreme presidency, after everybody has their ponies, after zombie power fuels the nation, and after the secret dental police have set up checkpoints every couple 100 yards or so. It is a warning from the people of the future to you, the people of their past, your present, that Vermin Supreme is a madman and must be stopped. So that's available at iPonybook.com. It has all sorts of exciting, wonderful artwork in it, including a beautiful, if you're a fan of pony-based erotica,
nice.
This could be the book for you.
I know some people
if we had more time, I would read that chapter to you. Of course, Vermin Supreme 2020.com is still live because Vermin Supreme is still my name, and 2020 is still the year.
True.
So you can go there and get merchandise still. Vermin Supreme is my channel on YouTube. The Real Vermin Supreme is my place on TikTok until they shut that down.
Okay.
I believe Vermin Supreme for President is on Instagram. Vermin Supreme for President Blue Checkmark Official is on Facebook.
Congratulations.
At Vermin Supreme, no blue checkmark, is on Twitter. So there's all that, and I also got to tell you about the Vermin Supreme Institute.
Oh, sure.
You were asking more. You were asking about the future, and this is like, we're going to be launching this mess in a few short weeks. It's called Vermin Supreme Institute. The is implied, but it's not part of the official name.
Okay.
But it's easy to say the Vermin Supreme Institute, but you don't want to confuse the with the actual name. So,
yeah.
And essentially, what we did is we added the word institute after Vermin Supreme, and it sounds really legit. It sounds totally legitimate. And we have, it is now a 5034C. A 503C4. I'm sorry. It's a not-for-profit. It's not a non-profit because you can't write it off, but you can donate anonymously large sums of money. So there is that. And we can spend up to 50% of our resources on things that are political. So we are registered with the IRS and whoever else to be as this organization, which gives us the ability to maintain a bank account that can hold tax-exempt money. Now, we are going to have initiatives because initially we had a hard time deciding whether we were going to be the Vermin Supreme Institute or initiative. We decided finally to be Institute because then we could have initiatives umbrellaed under the Institute. And so currently we are working on forgotten history. We're working on educational projects. We are working on acknowledging beautiful people, activists in their community who are doing things. And so we're starting out with a bunch of simpler and easier things that I believe that we'll be able to achieve enough and make them happen, but it will ultimately be defined by what it is that it turns into. And it should be a very a very worthwhile project, I think, and it came into existence because many of the people working on my campaign team, uh, really had a desire to continue our work along this vein. And that is what we came up with, the idea that if we had an institute, then we can start still spreading the words about mutual aid and compassion and volunteerism and love and kindness and taking care of one another and smashing the state. And we'll be offering protest tips and um, history of satire in politics and ideally logical fallacies. I'm trying to convince a couple sketch troops to start doing uh, bits on so we're really trying to be an educational institution, and I think that's a big part of what I've always done: information, education, and entertainment. And yeah.
Well, I certainly look forward to seeing the videos on the logical fallacies, and we look forward to what you do in the future. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Vermin.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a lovely chat, and I'm very glad that you did have a good talk with Spike, because once again he's an amazing communicator, and because he does come from that ANCAP perspective, and yet he doesn't want to tear out your grandma's feeding tube. So it's just, and once again, it's just sort of spreading the word, trying to open people's minds and let them know that what they think things are might not be the way that they really are, and that we might be able to all work together, on these common goals and the issues that will propel us forward. Even if you have the fucking Hoppians shouting about throwing people from the helicopters, I mean, I tear into them. I offer them free dick rides, on my fucking helicopter. So there is a little internecine, combating going on there for sure. But once again, let me assure all you left-leaners that the Libertarian Party we are doing our best to make sure that all voices are heard and all people and viewpoints can partake. And because it's it's the third largest party in America, so it is a feasible vehicle that I believe that those who are so inclined are more than welcome to jump on board and help us shape it in our images. Now, once again, anti-state, anti-authoritarian, but on the other hand, minarchists. And it's sort of like the minarchist advocates. They're sort of the devil's advocates. Sometimes I'll get in a jam. It's like, well, Vermin, but what about this? And it's like, okay, from a minarchist perspective, maybe we'll let that part of the government stay. But what,
For sure, man.
it is what it is, and communication is key, and trying to ramp down the acrimony, and trying to get to the reality, fact-based actuality of what it is that we're presenting, and what other people are presenting, and being able to detect the bullshit and make the informed decisions that we need to be able to make in a way that propels our democracy forward.
Well, clearly your boot is enhancing your abilities to grasp such concepts, because we don't do
I think that's a great outro. Vermin, thank you so much for your time.
Peace out, man.